This class is concerned with selection methods and more specifically assessment centres. Assessment centres are common in graduate recruitment. There's a widespread use of assessment centres when recruiting graduates into various careers. The process includes assessing a group of candidates by using a set of competencies related to the job on offer. So, a couple of points here. One, it relates to a group of candidates. So in other words, perhaps when a short list of candidates has been drawn up by the company after advertising a particular position, that short list is then passed to the assessment centre, and the candidates are invited to attend an assessment centre where their competencies, their skills, their abilities, their personalities and so on, these will be assessed and fed back to the employer so that it helps or facilitates the decision-making process as to which candidate gets the job. The tasks outlined must be relevant to the job and provide necessary feedback to the organisation regarding the candidate's abilities. So it's a way of helping in the decision-making process. It's a way of helping the personnel or the human resource section make a decision as to which candidate to recommend for employment. Now, the assessment centres, well, these were developed as a means of allowing candidates to communicate their abilities to employers. That's looking at it the other way around. It's looking at it in a more positive sense. The candidates for the job, they have a chance, they have a facility to demonstrate their capacities to do the job effectively. So it's an opportunity for the candidates to show off their abilities. Now, there are various tasks that the assessment centres may go through. For example, they may ask the individual to work as an individual, or they may ask him or her to work as a part of a group. And indeed, most exercises in assessment centres are group-based. But there will be some element of individual testing, perhaps IQ testing or psychological testing. But there will also be observations made in group activities to see who's emerging as the leader, who's come up with the best suggestions to solve a particular problem. So there are observations about group as well as individual pieces of assessment. There could be written tests and psychological testing, as I said. Generally speaking, these are conducted by professionals with expertise in interpreting the results of written tests and in looking at the results of some psychological tests. But the candidates may also be asked to make oral presentations perhaps about themselves or about one of their hobbies or about some achievement they had in the past. They may be given access to computers and to material and asked to put together a small presentation, perhaps 10 minutes presentation, talking about some achievement from their past or one of their hobbies or previous employment or about their university course or college course. So oral presentations is a way again of the observers making points about the quality of the presentation, about the quality of the material used, and how well prepared the candidate was to make the presentation. There are also what's known as in-basket tasks. This means that there are a variety of tasks to be completed, and it's necessary for the candidate to sort through the tasks and prioritize, pick out which tasks need urgent attention, which ones can be left for some time, and it also enables them to make decisions about the resources that are required to complete each task. perhaps the resource could be time. How long will it be to complete this task and that task and so on. And even prepare a very brief, a very straightforward Gantt chart of activities showing estimated completion dates, start times and completion times, I should say. Dates may be too far into the future. So it's the ability of the candidate to handle the tasks, a variety of tasks, and prioritize amongst the tasks. But candidates may also be assessed for their analytical ability, their ability to assess a particular situation, perhaps a problem, and come up with logical solutions or logical suggestions. Not just any old suggestion, ones based on reasoning. Now, this may involve some calculation, or it may involve observations, and perhaps it's a video shown to the candidates of a particular problem and asking them to come up with solutions to the problem. They may work individually, or they may be asked to work in a group to solve this problem and to come up with solutions. Again, it's an insight into the way that the individuals are thinking. And there are tasks related to individual problem solving. So individuals are isolated and given problems and ask them to solve the problems and come up with a methodology for the solution of such a problem. But also to be critical of their own processes, their own way of thinking, and suggest perhaps areas in which they themselves need further development. So it's self-recognition. They're looking critically at themselves as well as looking at the problem that's confronting them. Assessment centres also are good at setting up group discussions and problem solving. Many people talk about assessment centres asking the candidates to go out and perhaps build a bridge, a small bridge, or some way of crossing a small stream, and then making observations about how they went about collecting wood or making the construction and making it safe and so on. So the observers are able to make notes as to who suggested what and how it went, and was it a good suggestion, and how the team worked and who emerged as a leader, and the functions performed by each member of the team. So perhaps crossing a stream, that's one example, but there are many examples. It can be, as I said earlier, it could be looking at various videos of a small business, looking at problems confronting the business, looking at some facts and figures relating to the business, and then asking the group to make recommendations as to the future course, optimal course facing the business. What should it do? Should it invest in a particular machine? Should it outsource its product, or what should the business do? So it's a group discussion, and they're trying to solve a specific problem. It also gives the opportunity to role play, to get candidates to role play situations. So perhaps in a business context, someone is assigned the role of managing director, someone else is assigned the role of marketing director, and someone else, and so on. They all got different roles, and then they're given a particular scenario, and they must role play the scenario to some outcome, some suggestion. The scenario is normally contentious. They've normally got points of disagreement and issues and shortages of resources, and urgent decisions have to be made in certain time scales, and it can be very realistic. The role play can be very realistic indeed, and again it gives an insight into the individual and suggests how suitable they are for the position for which they've applied. So as we can see from the slide, Assessment centres test individuals in many ways and get to know the individuals to some extent and can make recommendations as to what type of position best suits them. Tasks given to candidates must be carefully developed and help bring about candidates' potential to succeed. So it's important not to humiliate or embarrass people at assessment centres. That's not the purpose of the assessment centre. The assessment centre is to find the strengths of each of the people who've come forward. And it may be the case that they've got strengths in different directions. But it's a question of marrying up the requirements of the job with the person most suitable. It doesn't mean that the rest of the people are bad. It means they have got skills and competencies perhaps suited to a different job when that becomes available. So it's identifying the skills that people have against the jobs that are on offer. So analyze the level of individual or group competitiveness. Look at the individual and ask, how competitive is the individual? How ambitious are they? How motivated are they to get this job or to prove themselves? And are they going about it correctly? Are they alienating their colleagues and upsetting their colleagues, or are they going about it more diplomatically? Perhaps if they're very ambitious, they need to take on board the feelings of the others in the group so as not to cause conflict. So their ambition has to be weighed against possible conflict that their out and out ambition has created. Individuals should be cooperative and they should show leadership skills, but cooperation is also important because it is a team effort. Group activities are team activities, and the team need the players, and the players need to be on the same side trying to achieve the objective and working together. And individuals should be capable of working together. So it's important that in assessment centres individuals are seen as good team players. Over and above that, they may have particular talents in terms of leadership, which may also be spotted. Sometimes when problems are given to individuals, some people come up with unusual solutions. These should not be laughed at, these should be considered seriously. Sometimes unusual solutions is a sign of creative thinking, bringing new ideas to the table, suggesting new ways of doing the task, looking at efficiency measures, looking at ways in which individuals can perform more effectively. So looking at people, looking at their creative side, that's also brought out in assessment centres. Individual and group ability to complete tasks in a given time. For example, in making presentations, it's often the case with students when they're making presentations that they just simply go on too long. They emphasize the point too much, and there is no proper structure to what they're trying to say. So individuals and groups need to be able to complete tasks on time. They need to be precise about when they start, and they need to be precise about when they finish. So for example, if the group was assigned to make a presentation, they may say they will start at 3 o'clock and they will finish at 3:10. Their slides may finish at 3:07, and they've allotted 3 minutes for questions and for comments from the floor. And then one of the group may act as chairperson and will cut off the conversation at 3:10. So they have started when they promised, and they're finished when they're promised. And that's a sign of good timekeeping. In fact, the ability to have good presentation skills is essential. It's important that each candidate for a job be capable of presenting not just himself, but presenting himself or herself, but also be capable of presenting an idea, presenting a position. It's presentation skills. It's the ability to present and be recognized as having communicated a message. The message could be, in a personal sense, that they are reliable, hard-working individuals who are keen and who have got certain skills and abilities. The presentation could also equally be that somebody has presented an idea in terms of a business presentation, and the idea was clear and the audience understood the message, and it was presented within certain time parameters, start time, finish time, etc., and it was clear as to what the message was. So having good presentation skills is very important. In assessment centres, interviewers must have the ability to spot potential through making observations, looking at the tasks and making observations, making notes. So there is onus on the skills of the interviewers. The assessment centres should have personnel who are tried and tested, who have got good assessment skills themselves. They can look at the group and make decisions as to who was dominant, who was leading, who was coming up with the good ideas, who kept the project running, who was the one who was trying to meet the time scale. They should be able to spot this, and they should be able to record it and even record evidence of why they believe that to be the case. Interviewers must be trained to effectively perform their task. For example, they must be able to observe, record information, analyze and evaluate behaviour. So the role of the interviewers in the assessment centre is crucial, and these people should be very well trained to do what they're attempting to do. They are attempting to make assessments on various fronts about individuals, and they must not just make the observations, but they must give reasons as to why they offer that particular viewpoint. They must be able to compare the findings against the job description and the person's specification. The person has got a curriculum vitae, but also may have added supplementary notes. So there's a good person description. The job description also defines what was required by the employer. And then looking at the various tasks undertaken at the assessment centre gives a good overall picture of the situation. Now, the interviewers and the personnel at the assessment centre should be capable of joining up the job description against who is most appropriate in that context, who in the group best meets the requirements of the job description. And that decision should come from the assessment centre. Ideally, it should come from a group of interviewers or assessors at the assessment centre, not from an individual. Now let's look at references. Not often considered, but let's look at the importance of references. They're used and are important in all job vacancies. Almost all jobs require references from known experts in the field, reputable people, from companies, from previous companies, from universities, from colleges, from people who have a reputation in a particular area. The process involves collecting information about the employee work history by contacting their previous employers. So that's normally in business, contact previous employers, and find out why the person left and what function did they perform in the business and how reliable were they, and so on. Try to get some detail from the previous employer. And generally speaking, employers are open to this, or they're open to passing on comments. It's important, therefore, that applicants have a good relationship with their previous employers. If they left because of some misdemeanor or some incident that reflects badly on them, perhaps they would not get a good reference. The process of collecting references gives a greater understanding about the candidate, about their qualifications, their experiences, and their training. And that's important. It's important to get the fullest possible picture before someone is appointed. So asking previous employers, asking universities and colleges, and asking other people who have known the person in various capacities, asking for their opinions in certain directions will give a wider view of the individual before they're appointed. So overall, this information enables the employer to make a decision as to whether this person is suitable for the job or not. Our candidate will state in his or her curriculum vitae their references, giving consent for prospective employers to contact them and obtain relevant information. So references are always normally at the end of a curriculum vitae, normally at the very end, two referees are mentioned who may be contacted. So it's important that the candidate has cleared that with the two referees in advance. In other words, contact them and ask them if they would be willing to act as the referee. Don't just put someone's name there so that they're contacted out of the blue, contacted almost randomly as they see it, and asked questions about someone. So this should be pre-warned that they are going down as referees. References can be obtained in writing. Sometimes companies or previous organizations will write out the reference so it can be printed out. Sometimes it's in standard forms. The person requesting the reference may issue a form asking previous employers or colleges or whoever, asking them to complete the form, in which case it doesn't have to be printed out, just complete the form that's supplied by them. Or indeed, it sometimes happens that they are simply contacted by telephone. It's the least reliable, and it's only in cases where a quick response is required. Generally speaking, companies prefer to have references in written format or on standard forms. Either of those will be acceptable. Telephones only if the timescale is very short and a quick decision is required. So this class has been about assessment centres and about references. Two important areas for graduates or students holding diplomas, let's say in business, who want to go into various careers. It's important that they're aware of what happens at an assessment centre, and also the importance of references and where references fit into the scheme of things. That's all I'm going to do in this session. I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.